Hey guys, it's Eddie and today I am back looking like a total disgruntled, look at me, I look like a mess today, but I'm back to bring you another movie review. And I just want to give you quickly a little bit of an update about what's been going on with me, because obviously, as you can tell, I haven't uploaded in the last couple of days, and it's because I've recently been getting to know my course. A lot of new reading material has suddenly been dropped on my head, so I've been trying to deal with that and catch up with those things in the last couple of days, so that's why I haven't uploaded as frequently. But with this video, I hope to return to my normal, uploading, and, hopefully that will continue, but I apologise for that, and I'm sorry that the lighting in here again is so terrible. I've tried it at a different angle. I hope this one's slightly better, but we'll see. So without further ado, the movie that we will be reviewing today is Bram Stoker's Dracula. Now, the friend Jessica that I mention all the time in my videos also suggested this one for me to do. She's really helping me out here, and I thank her endlessly for that. Now, this is the 1992 film directed by Francis Ford Coppola of The Godfather and Outsiders fame that we have already reviewed on this channel, and it's one of mine and Jess's, favourite movies. I think so anyway. We'll call it that. And it's an adaptation of the infamous Bram Stoker novel. Without further ado, I think we all know the story of Dracula, so let's get reviewing. Now, this film stars Gary Oldman, Winona Ryder, Anthony Hopkins and Keanu Reeves, among others, and I think it is a good modern take on the Dracula tale. I think it's got some great nods to the book and to the original 1931 Bela Lugosi Dracula film, with quotes like "the children of the night, what music they make," quote that's like sort of reiterated in this film, and there's other cute little nods, I call them cute, to the original in this remake. And there are some parts which are extremely close to the book. So as a huge fan of the novel, it's a classic. I was really pleased to see such really sort of acute attention to detail with scenes like Dracula sort of lizard crawling across the wall vertically, the castle wall vertically at night, and it's sort of shocking and repulsing Jonathan, who is staying at the castle. And it's things like that that really make, fans of such an important part of the horror genre and what we know today as the horror genre is really good. And I always loved to see that in this film. It makes me really happy. The thing with this film is everything just seems to be a little bit accentuated with more of a romanticised sort of seductiveness than was perhaps obviously written in the novel. I think all of the sensualities, all of the sort of sexual implications of Dracula were sort of either low-key or fairly subtle in the book, but this film goes full force on the sex side. And of course, it's obviously more presented as a love story. We don't get that as much in the novel. Is the sex and the seductiveness totally necessary? I wouldn't say so. I mean, I know that sex and horror goes hand in hand, or they say it does, but, we've proven, or Bram Stoker rather has proven that, the story was able to be conveyed with, enough conviction and enough impact without all of the sex and seduction. I liked the sort of enhanced romance with Mina and, Vlad, but aka Dracula, but I felt at times that the sort of sex side of things was a little bit over generous, and it didn't sort of feel anymore like it was contributing to the story as it was, you know, in aspects of the romance with Mina and Vlad. But aside from that, let's just move on from that. That's just what I think. There were, apart from the main cast, I thought there were some really good, you know, standouts of this film. I loved Sadie Frost as Lucy. I thought she, you know, was able to convey that really sort of vivacious young girl who had her sort of eager naivety sort of stripped as she sort of was used by Dracula. She sort of became his sort of concubine, and she was sort of turned from this sort of excited young girl into this sort of vicious sort of animal, and it was quite sad to see her deteriorate, but I thought Sadie Frost handled the part really well. Another small part that I loved is Tom Waits as Renfield. You know, we don't see him a lot. We mainly see him confined to the cell of a mental asylum in this film, but he's just so sort of grotesque and weird, you know, when he sat there sort of eating flies and spiders, and, you know, he'll sort of quickly change into a sort of a violent rage and, you know, start screaming at people. And I thought he was a really interesting part to play, and I thought Tom Waits handled it really well and conveyed a really sort of erratic, just horrible element to Renfield, but I loved it. Now, Gary Oldman as the title role is just flawless. I am a huge Gary Oldman fan, and I think that, you know, to play a character as infamous as Dracula is quite daunting. You know, we've had great interpretations from Bela Lugosi and from Christopher Lee. So to take on that role, even though this film is like over 20 years old now, still to take on that role even at that time with such a legacy that it had, I think was difficult. And I think that Gary just brought a completely new light to it, which was sort of beautiful. He professed the role with such a precision, I think, through both physical and sort of personal changes. You know, we see him at the beginning as this old sort of creepy count, and who's kind of lusting after the blood of his guest, Jonathan. And then he's able to switch from that so wonderfully into this sort of dark, charming, beautiful prince that charms Mina, aka Winona Ryder. And he's able to change between those roles with such fluidity. And even though he's supposed to be a villain, he's a vampire, you know, and the natural, you know, plot of the film and the story would be to defeat him because he's a figure of sort of evil. He does make you feel sorry for him, and I think that is one sort of element that is quite good to see in you know, Francis Ford Coppola's take on this film. It's really nice. And Gary, he's just wonderful. Is he ever bad in a role? I don't actually think so. And obviously we do see a sensitive side to him, and Gary brings that wonderfully. Now, the next person I wish to mention is the fantastic Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing. You know, we see him initially in this film as this sort of erratic sort of doctor, but he's actually, you know, quite a complex character, and we see that in this film. You know, he sort of gets very drawn in by Mina, and you know, in the last stages of the film when she's been bitten, we almost see him collide with the dark side. At one point he's sort of seduced by it all, but we also see a really mysterious side to Van Helsing, which I think again Anthony Hopkins is just able to give this character so many layers. He's brilliant in the role, and he counteracts Gary in the role of Dracula really well. So obviously, with these two sides against each other, we get two completely different tones. We get this quite determined, full of life doctor, and then on the other side we've got this, really mysterious, sort of sensual count. And it's great to see the two sort of counterbalancing personalities in this film conveyed by two absolutely fantastic actors, and I love them both. And again, is Anthony Hopkins bad in anything? Another one, absolutely not. I love Anthony Hopkins. And I think I forgot to mention that I think that Gary Oldman and Winona Ryder have a fantastic chemistry in this film. It's kind of a haphazard, forbidden romance. She's engaged to Jonathan, she marries him eventually, but she is so bound because of, time and the past to the Count, to Dracula. And it's very sad actually, but very beautiful, and I think they do connect with each other very well in the film. Winona herself as Mina, I think she may not be the sort of standout performance in this film. I think she's sort of slightly overshadowed by the likes of Gary and Anthony and maybe even Sadie. I just think that Sadie's character is a lot more interesting than Mina. I mean, Mina has some great qualities, and she enters this really wild sort of feeling romance with the Count, but I just feel like she's not the best part of this film, but she's certainly not the worst either. I think she fares well in the role, and I love Winona as well, so I don't want to say anything bad about her, but I don't think there is anything bad to say. I think she fares really well in this film, and yeah. Something that I can't refrain from, criticising about this film is the choice of Keanu Reeves to play Jonathan. Now, I appreciate that Keanu Reeves is great in films like The Matrix and Speed, but I just don't think he was right for the role as Jonathan. I think he's definitely got the look, and I think together, visually, him and Winona looked really beautiful on screen. But to be playing a sort of 19th century sort of lawyer gentleman that Jonathan is, I don't think that Keanu Reeves matched the role very well. And I think most of it stems from his accent. I think it was just, the British accent that he put on was quite sort of dodgy, and sometimes it kind of felt like it was fading, and on certain words you could hear some American still coming through, and I find it kind of hard to get past when I'm watching the film. I think this is kind of like a unanimous opinion, but obviously some people might not hold the same opinion as me. That's just me. I just think that maybe somebody else could have been better for the role, and it does kind of spoil certain elements of the film for me. But again, that's just my opinion. Please don't hate me. Any Keanu Reeves fans out there, he's great in other stuff. It's just this film. But I absolutely love this film. I think it's a great, interesting, modern adaptation of a classic horror novel. And even though, there are some quite drastic changes, there are also some real loyal elements to the book, and I like that. And I like that we see a different light to the story from Francis Ford Coppola's adaptation to other people's and to ones we've seen in the past. And I would definitely recommend this film to anyone who's a fan of the sort of vampire supernatural genre. Anyone who's a fan of films like Interview with the Vampire, I think those two films kind of go hand in hand. So if you're into that kind of genre, that sort of horror, films with like horror elements, you should just go for it. I would again warn anyone who doesn't like, nudity or gore. It's probably not the best film for you, but it's a great film and nevertheless. And for those who would watch it, I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. If you have watched it, tell me what you think, comment below. And if I had to rate it personally, I'd probably give it like 4 out of 5 stars. There are some imperfections, there are some parts that are a little bit, maybe we could have done a little bit better here, but I think the majority of the cast really pull this movie through, and I think it's got some really beautiful elements to a dark story, and even in its sort of romanticism of the horror genre, I think it's really beautiful and worth a watch. So thank you guys for watching this review. If you have any other suggestions of movies for me to review, just leave a comment down below or message me on my Tumblr, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!